Welcome back to the channel. Adventures through climate change with your host Trevor Snyder. That is me. We take an armchair approach, watching other people's videos, trying to figure out what the heck is going on, watching a broad spectrum of what is climate change, all the way up to different things that are happening to the earth that things that we got to look out for or should consider, whatever. Today, we actually have a suggestion from one of the viewers that wished to not be mentioned who they are, and this is Anton Petrov, and he's got some great videos. If you guys haven't watched him before, I'm just now subscribed with this account, but I've been subscribed on some of my other accounts. I like him a lot. He does a lot of space type of stuff, and this one does possibly have something to do with the Earth and climate and what's going on. What he says, and this was from about 8 months ago, I believe 8 months ago, is Earth's magnetic field flipping. Studies discover important data. So, without further ado, because it's a 13-minute video and I don't want to talk too much, we will let him say what he has to say. Let us get informed, and then we'll talk about it at the end.
Hello, wonderful person. This is Anton, and today we're going to be discussing the magnetic field of our planet. And I guess more specifically, we're going to be discussing the idea behind the magnetic flip of the magnetic field of our planet, where the magnetic lines flip from north to south. Something we know happened in the past many, many times. As a matter of fact, previous studies have identified hundreds of such events by looking at various deposits and various sediments where it becomes quite visible that the north used to be south and the south used to be north.
That's scary.
Something that we know usually is preceded by a sudden weakening of the magnetic field, with the event itself very likely lasting for a few hundred years. Which of course suggests that during such an event, the magnetic field of planet Earth might actually disappear for at least some time. And because a lot of the modern technology directly depends on the existence of the magnetic field on planet Earth, it's actually something that we would like to understand and learn more about. It's one of the more important topics when it comes to studying planet Earth. But I guess the question is, what makes the scientists believe that the magnetic field could be potentially flipping soon? Well, there are two main reasons for this. One of them is in regards to the geological record of the planet in the last 200 years. The scientists determined that the magnetic field has weakened by approximately 9% in total. In other words, the field was about 9% stronger approximately 200 years ago. On top of this, there's a really unusual anomaly that's been forming in the South Atlantic region that you can sort of see as this black dot right there somewhere in South America. This is known as the South Atlantic anomaly, and it's something that the scientists have known about since 1958. As a matter of fact, this particular black dot has already caused a lot of problems to a lot of different space missions. Now, some of them are not particularly dramatic, like for example, the Hubble telescope is actually usually unable to take any pictures in this area and has to fly through it without doing any kind of science, but some of them have been a lot more dramatic. Although I guess the first question here is, how exactly is this formed? Well, today the scientists believe that it's because of the inner Van Allen's radiation belt that comes extremely close to the planet's surface, going down to an altitude of about 200 kilometers or 120 miles in this particular region.
Of
And because of
course.
this dramatically increases the overall radiation that a lot of satellites or any kind of a spacecraft flying through here will experience by going through the region. And on top of this, the overall Earth's magnetic field is also much weaker in this region as well. Moreover, it's been established that the overall field intensity in this region has dramatically decreased in the last 150 to 200 years. Yet the overall area has increased by approximately 5 times, which implies that this particular anomaly seems to be increasing in size but decreasing in strength, meaning that it's creating a kind of a magnetic hole. And even though it doesn't seem to change in the southern part of the anomaly, it has been expanding to the northwest, to the north, and to the northeast. And because of this, since the beginning of the space age, it's actually created a lot of problems for a lot of different things. We're talking about things in space, including astronauts, including the International Space Station. For example, all of the astronauts that have spent enough time flying through this region have usually reported unusual white dots flashing in their eyes. They're sometimes referred to as the phosphines or the astronaut's eye. More officially, they're known as the cosmic ray visual phenomena and are believed to be formed either because the cosmic rays are striking retina or maybe even neurons, or possibly because the cosmic rays are producing what's known as the Cherenkov radiation in the liquid of the astronaut's eyes. The actual mechanism is not understood completely yet, but we know that this is a fact and it's been observed by pretty much everyone, especially in this region. It also obviously implies that by flying through here, the astronauts are exposed to way more radiation than usual. And because of this, there are a lot of different measures ISS has taken over the years to protect the astronauts when they're in this area. On top of this, at least one satellite network known as Globalstar has actually completely failed back in 2007 because of this particular area and because of the extreme radiation that the satellites were exposed to. It was also reported that pretty much all of the computers on the space shuttle would usually crash and create a lot of errors when the space shuttle moved through this area as it approached the ISS. But one of the most expensive losses to date was the Japanese Hitomi satellite, which very likely started to fail as it passed through this area, with a lot of different devices failing afterwards. This was a really expensive mission, but it only lasted for approximately a month, and was supposed to be the most powerful X-ray telescope Japan would have ever launched. And so the growing South Atlantic anomaly, along with the overall weakening of the magnetic field in the last 200 years, presented the scientists with a bit of a concern. Is the magnetic field about to flip, or are we about to experience what's known as the excursion, with the most famous one being the so-called La Chambre excursion that happened approximately 42,000 years ago. It's also sometimes known as the La Chambre event, and is believed to have occurred for over a period of about 800 years. During that time, it's also believed that the magnetic field of the planet might have been actually completely gone. And during that time, the poles have also temporarily flipped, but then flipped back to the original position, with the field returning back to normal within approximately 1,000 years. Now, we've actually talked about this event in the past, and it's a very well-known and well-studied phenomenon, but what exact effects this had on planet Earth is not really understood today either. We do, however, have some really unusual correlation with this event. So approximately 42,000 years ago, that's when, for example, a lot of megafauna that used to be present on the planet started to disappear as well. Now, we still have no clear evidence that it happened because of the event, but the correlation is still there. Around this time, this is also when our cousins, the Neanderthals, went extinct as well. But more intriguingly, this is also when a lot of cave art appeared around the planet, with the implication here being that maybe the early humans were
Pushed into the caves.
to live in caves a lot more often because of the inhospitable conditions outside. Now, obviously, a lot of these are very, very big speculations, but a lot of scientists have been speculating about this for many years now, with some other speculations including the climate change in the North Europe and North Asia, and possibly a lot of other things that happened to the planet in those 800 years. In other words, whatever happened on the planet during that time was very likely not good for life on the planet. And so, are we headed for another one? That's basically the big question here.
That is the
The signs
question.
from the anomaly and from the weakening of the field kind of imply that. But the recent study argues against that. And actually, that's not the only study.
I like that.
Many studies today have finally figured out that chances are we're not actually headed for any kind of excursion or any kind of a flip. And here's why they think so. So first of all, a very wide paleomagnetic record has officially showed us that the magnetic field of the planet right now is much, much stronger than it's been in the last few millions of years. It's only weakened by a little bit in the last few hundreds of years, but when comparing this to the field from approximately 100,000 years ago, it seems to be very, very strong. And it's actually twice as strong as a million years ago. So in other words, even though the field might have weakened by 9% in the last 200 years, overall it actually strengthened dramatically over the period of 100,000 years. Okay, but what about that South Atlantic anomaly? And so that's exactly what this new study focuses on. The scientists here realized if they can actually find more of these anomalies in the last, let's just say, 9,000 years, it might help us understand that this is something that just generally happens to our planet. And that's exactly what they did. They collected a lot of magnetic record using, for example, pottery that usually contains signs of the magnetic flips and magnetic reversals, or just generally allows us to even measure the magnetic field in the past. They've also looked at the deposits from various sediments and various volcanic rocks on the
Wacky.
planet, and determined that overall, in both North America and Middle East and Europe, the magnetic field did actually change quite a lot in the last 9,000 years. But more importantly, they did discover at least one other similar anomaly that happened somewhere in the region of North America and potentially also happened in the region of the Middle East. Or it could have actually been the same anomaly that sort of moved around and shifted around the planet over a period of several hundred years. And in terms of the actual size and strength of the anomaly, you can see in this image that it was extremely similar to what we have today in South America. The anomaly that was present in North America very likely started around the year of 1600 BC and lasted for at least 1300 years, disappearing almost completely within just a few hundred years afterwards. And I guess one of the more unusual and more interesting discoveries in this particular paper can be seen in this graph. It shows us that the strength of the field around the entire planet didn't just recover, but it actually bounced back to levels that were much, much higher than before and stayed at these levels for at least a few hundred years as well. With this being a really important discovery, it means that whatever is happening in South America right now is not just a temporary event, it's very likely an event that's going to reverse completely, returning the magnetic field to normal levels, but then might even cause the magnetic field to strengthen dramatically, which might last for several hundred years. And so, in other words, it really shows us that this is not an anomaly at all. It's just some kind of event we don't really understand very well, and it's something that very likely happens to our planet pretty regularly because of some unusual activity inside the planet. And this, by the way,
Just what we don't
even has a
understand.
potential solution in another paper that we discussed only a few months ago, or I guess maybe a few years ago, depending on when you're watching this video. The video itself should be in the description, but in a nutshell, not so long ago, the scientists realized there are these unusual magnetic waves that seem to be propagating inside the planet, very close to the core of the planet, and they seem to be doing so every 7 years. Kind of like these really large magnetic tsunamis that we still don't understand. And chances are that this is exactly what's causing these effects on the surface of the planet, but we obviously have no idea how any of this works just yet. But the important message in this paper is really the fact that we probably have nothing to worry about when it comes to the magnetic flip or the potential excursion where the magnetic field disappears completely. At the moment,
Probably have
with these
nothing to worry about.
conditions, nothing major is happening to the planet, and the magnetic field will very likely remain strong or even strengthen in the next few hundreds of years. Which is obviously great news because without the magnetic field, we're going to have to go back a few hundred years in terms of the technology. We might not be ever able to use any electronics ever again if the magnetic field disappears. But this new study does provide us with some good news, and chances are the scientists behind the study are actually correct. The discovery of this anomaly in North America suggests that calling them anomalies is maybe not really correct. It's some kind of an event that happens to the planet, but we don't understand how or why. But I guess the next important step is to try to analyze this ancient anomaly a little bit more in order to determine how the South Atlantic anomaly is going to evolve and what we can expect in the next few decades and a few hundreds of years. Because, as you probably know, the space technology is getting more complex, and a lot of our modern civilization and modern way of life depend on space technology. And so, by being able to somehow protect satellites when they fly through this area and when they're affected by this anomaly, and by being able to prevent the potential damage, is actually something that the scientists would really like to understand more and would like to find a solution to. Because that magnetic hole is not going away and it's still growing. We don't really know for how long, but as long as it's there, these satellites are still going to be in danger. And obviously also the astronauts that are still on the International Space Station. And so trying to learn more about this is super important. But I guess for now, that's kind of all we know. A really interesting discovery, a very important study, but something we'll be talking more about in some of the future videos. And so until then, thank you for watching, subscribe, maybe share this with someone who loves learning about space and sciences, and maybe come back tomorrow to learn something else. Support this channel Patreon by joining the channel membership or by buying the Wonderful Person t-shirt you can find in the description. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye-bye.
He's a fun guy. He's a fun guy. Apparently we got nothing to worry about. So, I mean, there's a bunch of polar shift stuff. This was a different one than like what I've watched. I've heard people say that it doesn't actually do north to south. That it actually can, a polar shift can be a shift where like the Earth turns sideways and you do like a 90-degree turn or something like that, and the equator becomes north and south, and vice versa, and it could go like that. And then what happens is the water kind of shifts with it, just kind of like how when you shift a glass with water in it, the water will eventually shift and splash out, create tsunamis across the world. I don't really know. Okay, I don't know any of this stuff, but that doesn't seem plausible to me. I'm like Anton in this video. I think that the science says that we're not quite there yet. Could it be in the future or something like that? I personally think that anything that's going to hit us at this point, or that's going to be a major problem, is going to be something that we don't see coming, not something that we're planning for right now. I think that spending all this money on like the climate changes, and how we demonize certain energy products and whatnot, I don't think is good, because I don't think that's going to be our major issue personally. With that being said, maybe I earned your subscription today. Otherwise, maybe in the future, and maybe a like or dislike, whatever. More importantly, a comment so I know what you're thinking. I will try to reply. I don't always reply because a lot of times I'm reading it on my phone, but I might reply. I do appreciate the comments because then I know some people are telling me what to watch or what to read and different things. It's fantastic. That's what channel is about. It's about the community. And hopefully I check you on the next video. Catch you on the next video. That's it. All right. Bye.